I want to thank all the publicity, or all of you would not be here. This is a wonderful crowd. We had no idea how counterterrorism and counter everything would bring this bigger crowd. So we appreciate all of you coming, and some of you have come from a very far away. We're really glad that Mayor Steve Frattini is here, but we're also glad we have a Williamson County Deputy Sheriff who came just because of what Dr. Jackson was speaking about. So Frattini and Fleming, stand up because these are city officials.
I just saw John earlier, so you don't have to stand up.
We're very pleased that you could be here today. I call attention, there are many women in here. If you were ever a Girl Scout, Lisa Carnegie and Susan Mullen on the staff here at the Herrin City Library have a marvelous Girl Scout display in the Herrin History Room. And so I hope you'll go take a look at that. That will be up for a while. I also want you to know the star of our Herrin History Room, who we have to credit her for many things. She's standing over here. She's tall and beautiful. And she and her husband Bill are the grand parade marshals for Herrin Festa Italiana for 2019. And that I also...
Chief Laird would be with us this afternoon, but I spoke to him earlier, and he's going to try to make it least tied up in an operations type meeting.
We're very pleased today to have Dr. Gary Jackson with us. This is all his family up here, so they deserve a round. He also is a Herrin native, and we owe much to, I think we all remember the city attorney, David Craig, who was a great historian himself. He was a city attorney, brilliant man, who has crossed the Rainbow Bridge. But his wife, Linda Craig, is the one who turned us on to Dr. Gary Jackson, because she is a neighbor to Gary's sister, Rita Carringer, and we're very pleased that Rita's here as well, and his brother, Kevin. So Linda gave us the tip, and we proceeded to begin a correspondence with Dr. Jackson. He is a fascinating man, and some of the things he shared in an email are not things maybe you're going to hear about today. He formerly worked for the CIA. He was with the U.S. Secret Service. He lives in Pasadena, Maryland. He is president of his company, Abaco. He has written now 2 books, and the most recent one is something I hope you will consider purchasing, because it tells us what to do if these bad things would happen to us. And it can happen anywhere, as we know. It has not happened in Williamson County, but I was just talking with the deputy sheriff, and he said, you know, it can happen anywhere. Gary holds degrees from Southern Illinois University, both his undergraduate and his PhD. He has a master's degree from the University of Illinois in Springfield. He has his fiancée with us today. She is Chinese extraction. Her name is Pei, and we're very glad that she could be with us as well. So, I hope that you read about him in the Southern Illinois, and he has a wonderful resume. It's very intricate. Gordon Pruitt, after he read it, he said, this guy knows his stuff. He's going to speak to us today, though very unclinically, so we mortals who do not understand all of his work will be able to understand it. So with great adieu, I give you Dr. Gary Jackson. Adjournment.
Well, first of all, I appreciate Linda and Cheryl and Sister Rita with the D, getting this started. And it's an unusual experience to come back to where you were born to give a talk. So this is good. I'm going to enjoy this. And my objective is not to scare you, first of all. It can be a scary topic. But if you look at how to be prepared, this kind of topic is less scary. People are usually fearful and scared because they're not prepared. So I often use the analogy when you go on a plane trip, you put on a seat belt, or you know, they told you how to do it 50 times, you still do it, they show you how you're getting prepared. Check the engine and stuff like that. You get in your car, you put on a seat belt, so your airbag can work. You're prepared. You feel a little bit better. When it comes to mass victim attacks, most people are not prepared.
They won't get the microphone.
Okay.
Is that agreeable with everyone? Do some of you need a microphone? I think you do too.
Is this working?
Yes.
I thought she was gonna tell me it was over. So, my whole point, let me say a little bit about my career and why it led to this. So I started a long time ago in clinical settings. And for some reason, which is strange given my size and physical ability, I chose to look for aggressive, dangerous people and how to predict what they would do next. I learned very quickly through some scars that it's a painful process learning that. But that worked in clinical settings. I did that for many, many, many years. I became fascinated by how you could actually predict what could happen next and where. That work got me sent to the Secret Service, where I developed new technology to look at threat now, not just an individual, but from groups and from countries that might want to threaten and harm or kill the president, vice president, and other protectees. That was successful. We developed some new methods to look at how to predict what people might do next to harm us and how we could prevent that. That got me recruited to the Secret Service. They said, okay, come and do it for us. I did that for many years, which involved becoming an intelligence officer and running a number of technology branches for the CIA to do something similar. And of course, we can't talk too deeply about that. But also did rendition, meaning go out and find bad people and bring them back. So sticking with that mode of interest for some reason, I eventually left the Secret Service and started developing my own companies so I could develop the technology to a point where it could be used. And it's used in two ways. It's used in cyber threat. Everybody knows what cyber threat is. You can't trust your computers anymore. So we have new technology based on the same methods that protect that, and we're using that now. The other half was, okay, let's start looking at mass victim attackers. It's a problem. It's not a new problem. Many people think it's a new problem. It's not. In 1927 in Bath, Michigan, there was a deranged individual that got upset with everyone. And remember, this is 1927. He went to the school, bombed it, killing 38 children, 6 adults, and then killed himself, including his wife. It's not new. We're hearing more about it. And it does seem that some of the active shooting cases are increasing in frequency and the number of deaths. Why? Semi-automatic weapons are pretty easy to get. It's not about guns. The one thing I learned a long time ago in my study of this problem is we really have 4 kinds of attack. We have shooting, we have guns. We have knives, machetes, hatchets. They're all used. We now have vehicle rundowns. You see them in the paper, you see them on the news. And you see bombings, a lot of bombings, including this one here. That's considered a bomb. And let me start on the slides a little bit, because I'll just keep talking. And I lost my mouse. Keep in mind, I invent computer science technology, so I cannot. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, so I can get started here. Doesn't like no mouse.
Can't you get the enter key?
I'm trying everything. Where's Susan? By the way, I have to say something about Susan, if she doesn't mind. So I came yesterday to try this out, and I'm talking to her, and she's talking about all of the security measures that are in process in this library. So, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm talking to her, and I'm not going to give the methods, but it's because of this lady that I go around a lot talking to people about this problem. She's been working for years to get this library prepared, and it's got some really advanced measures in it. So, you get time, thank her, because it's a safe library because of her. Now let's see if she can get this done. Yeah, I know. But let me talk while she's doing that. Thank you, Susan. So one of the first things I wanted to do, because of the past work with the Secret Service, oh, thank you, that's good. There you go, you got it, thank you. That first image is actually an image of that image was actually of the World Trade Center burning. And I think probably everybody in here, unless you're less than 25, remembers what you were doing that day. It was horrible. We had almost 3,000 people killed. It was more than Pearl Harbor. I worked in the Pentagon at the time. I ran a threat cell. I was late that day, fortunately. I had a staff member who I'd sent in to get some paperwork for me to bring it out. When she walked out the front door, the plane hit the Pentagon. We went back to work there the next day, right next to where the plane hit. Our boss, Admiral Morgan, worked at Ground Center. The plane hit his office. Now, what I was impressed by on that day was everybody was working diligently already. There was smoke, there was stench. We were already working on who did it and how to stop it in the future. Nothing stopped. That was just impressed me. And that got me really super interested. I know mass attacks have been occurring for a long time, but that was just way over the line. And then I started looking at mass victim attacks, and there were so many of them. Shootings to runovers to stabbings, bombings. You know, everybody here probably remembers the Oklahoma City bomb. You know, 168 killed with that one bomb. There was damage for 10 blocks, and there were over 700 injured. You know, from one person, well, actually 2 people. So one person could cause a lot of damage. So as I looked at it, I had to classify who are these people. Are they all terrorists? Many people, there'll be an incident, people say, oh, it's a terrorist attack. Not all of them are terrorist attacks. So on the screen you can see there are 5 categories. There's international terrorism, that's Al-Qaeda, ISIS, those people that are organized outside of our country that want to do great damage to us, like 9/11. There's domestic terrorists, those people that are U.S. citizens that commit a terrorist act, but they do it here as a citizen. The Oklahoma City bombing, case in point. Self-radicalized terrorism. They're here, but they get organized by looking and really wanting to be like a foreign terrorist group to hurt us. They take on the religion, they take on the characteristics, and they might not have even been contacted by that foreign outfit. And they attack, and we have examples of that. I actually could talk a week, I know you don't want me to, but on the number of attacks we've had. Then we have the large number of attacks that are motivated by hate and bias. People sometimes just hate certain religions, they hate certain races, and they will actually kill people. That's the degree of the hate, or bias, or prejudice. We've seen recently the number of attacks on houses of worship. It doesn't matter what the religion is, we've seen them across all religions. And then we have an unfortunate category of mental health issues. People, these attackers just suffer from severe mental health issues. Let me get this going. So, not to go through all of these again, because I know time is a little tight, but I guess the one that disturbed me the most, and that's when I started writing, was Sandy Hook Elementary School. I think everybody remembers that. He had mental health issues. He had them for a long time. They weren't attended to. In his room, they found out afterwards, he had posters and pictures hanging of mass attacks, of people getting killed. He wanted to shoot. His mother knew he had severe problems. She wanted to get him help, but didn't want to hurt his feelings. She wanted to get close to him. He wanted to shoot, so she went and bought guns. The guns that were used in the shooting, by the way. and took him to shooting ranges so he could practice, thinking he would listen to her, they'd be close friends. He got up one morning, went upstairs with his guns, killed his mother with 2 shots in the head. That's the thanks she got. He then drove to Sandy Hook Elementary, about 5 minutes away, went through the front door, and killed 25 and 6-year-olds and 5 adults trying to protect them. You look at that and you wonder, how can any monster do that? I mean, how can you do that? And that's this category. I find it one of the most disturbing. Because we have mental health programs, and we should be doing a better job of finding these people and treating them. I do a lot in the book on prevention. I've heard people say, you can't prevent these. It's absolutely not true. Every event I looked at, and there were hundreds, every one of them had warning signs. Every one of them. People don't act on warning signs. If you act on warning signs, you can prevent. Parents don't want to report children. A spouse doesn't want to report a husband or a wife, or a cousin, or a neighbor. Therefore, it doesn't get reported. It continues to the point where it's a mass attack. So first of all, there should be better reporting. And I go into detail on how to do that so you're not afraid to report. You can report anonymously. There are ways to report anonymously. And you can report to your law enforcement. There are times you report to law enforcement, and there are times you report to 911 or call 911. Very important. If you see something suspicious, call law enforcement. Let them know. Let them act on it. Let them investigate. If you see something just about ready to happen, call 911. You're going to get first responders. You're going to get everybody. It's going to be an emergency situation. Just explain it clearly and where it is and what's happening. And I'm sure the law enforcement here could give you a lot of detail on that. So we've had these different types of attacks. For each one, there are probably an average of 15 or so per category. It's not new. It's been going on for a long time. We're seeing more active shootings, but we're also seeing drive-throughs, drive-overs, run-overs, and we're seeing the knives. And then there's category that's hybrid. You see combinations. So for example, in some of the run-overs, once they run over 10, 15 people, kill them, they get out with knives, and then attack with knife. Now why do they do that? They've been instructed to by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They say guns are harder to get in foreign countries. So rent a vehicle, make a knife, or go buy a knife, and run over people or stab them to death. You don't need a gun. Use a pressure cooker. The Boston Marathon attackers made their pressure cooker bombs from Al-Qaeda instructions on the internet. So internet's wonderful. But it also carries with it anything you'd want to know to commit a mass victim attack, including making bombs, how to do it in a quiet way, how to hide, how to do surveillance. So all of these things are very, very important, which means we need to be more aware. We need to have that seatbelt on for mass victim attacks. So these are the kinds of weapons I'm talking about that we've seen. And the knife is an actual weapon that was used. And notice it's not a fancy Bowie knife that you get, from Walmart. It's a handmade knife. You don't have to go buy them. You don't have to worry about being tracked. You can make a weapon. You can make your pressure cooker bomb. You can make a knife. Not that hard. You sharpen a lawnmower blade. You can sharpen a piece of metal and make a knife. And what most people don't realize, if you work in emergency rooms, people coming in with knife wounds can be just as bad, sometimes worse, than a gunshot. It's a horrible, horrible weapon. So all of these things are in play at this point. And as someone said in the beginning, you can't think, okay, we're in Herrin. This can't happen in Herrin. It's a small. There was only one common thing, and that's just a group of people. The goal is to hit a group of people. That's it. Now why? You want to kill as many as fast as you can. And we often see the semi-automatic weapons. You know, you're going to get 2 bullets a second, average. And fast reload, okay, start looking at that in terms of minutes. So what you do in the first seconds is extremely important. If you're aware and what could happen, you're going to think more about what this could be and you're going to get out of there. There are people that hear gunshots, think they're firecrackers, and stand there with their iPhone taking videos. They should be gone. They've just increased the chance they're going to get hit or killed with bullets because they're curious. Who cares? Don't take a video. Leave. You have to be constantly aware. So I say, you know, it doesn't matter where you are. These are actual targets. I don't know if you can read that from there, but you name it. Okay? Recreational centers, airports, airliners, streets, bars, grills, cafeteria, colleges, universities. We've had elementary school, high school, universities. Doesn't matter. Brokerage house, commercial buildings. We had a newspaper office this year near me, in Annapolis. Guy walks in and kills 3 people. Why? It's that mental health issues. They put an article about him having a criminal problem 3 months earlier about a potential divorce. There were some proceedings. Okay, he waits, comes back. And you know, they're not that brave. He killed 3 people. They found him when they rushed the room hiding under a desk. So he didn't want to confront the policeman after killing 3 people. But to show you how serious they are, at least half, if not a little more, of these attackers commit suicide at the end. They're prepared. They're prepared to die. Or, we call it suicide by cop, I'm sure you've heard that before. You don't kill yourself, you do something wrong and let the cop kill you. Same thing. That's why we call it suicide. The Secret Service calls it suicide by cop. Or you're just going to get shot by means of you attacking. But very few actually want to stay alive. There are a few, and they get questioned. And it's been fascinating to hear what they have to say. Maybe I'll say a bit about that in a minute. But this is the only commonality. So when you're in a group, your awareness should increase. You always want to, it doesn't mean you have to be afraid, but just be aware. When I go to a restaurant, it takes me about 10 seconds. I know where the exits are. I know where the windows are that I could break out with a chair if I had to. I know what's upstairs, what's downstairs, and I know to avoid the bathroom. Because the bathroom doesn't have an exit. I can't tell you how many incidents I have found where there were multiple fatalities in restrooms. If people just run to the restroom for some reason, there's no way out. Attackers know that. So, you know, the more you know about this topic, the more likely you are to avoid being a victim. You know, I also mentioned other things about attacks that you don't hear about very often. There are survivors of these attacks, and the survivors suffer. They suffer, some of them, for a lifetime. From a psychological standpoint, there's acute stress syndrome afterwards, ASD. That's severe stress. You can't function, you can't get along, you can't eat. It lasts about 30 days. If it goes over that, now you have PTSD. It's a time. Symptoms can be the same, but it's longer. People can suffer from PTSD for a lifetime. They need treatment. They need help. And help doesn't mean, oh, they want to talk, so I'll just talk to them all. But they don't want that. You have to know the person, and the best thing you can do for a person who suffers from PTSD is make sure they get the right kind of help and the right kind of treatment. It might not be you, even though you might be the best friend. The best thing you can do is get them help. And we've seen PTSD. It's a horrible problem. I think it's still under-recognized. We have 21 veterans a day in this country commit suicide. 21 a day, 365 a day, every year. It's hard to imagine that we have that many with such severe stress. And people suffer that kind of stress after a mass victim attack as well. And we've had suicides after a mass victim attack. Fortunately, they're not high, but they do occur. So you have to consider that a mass victim attack isn't just about people getting killed. You see on TV, 14 killed. Okay, well, how many people saw that? They were there, they felt it, and they're going to suffer for the next 20 years unless something is done. Some people can go through it, and they're fine. Same with that. Just a different way of handling it, a different way of coping. But it's very, very serious problem. So I talk about, in the book, I talk about how do you actually be prepared. You have to give it thought. There's a reason why astronauts get trained in these training capsules for weeks and weeks and weeks doing the same thing. They overtrain because it reduces the reaction time. If something happens in a space capsule, they hit the button to turn off the red light before they even know what they're doing. They've been trained, they've thought about it, they have less reaction. If you're not prepared for something, you have this response, the startle response, where you have to stop, think, what's going on, what am I hearing, what am I seeing, what could this be? Okay, seconds are ticking by. You need to be out of there. By simply giving these kinds of things thought and thinking about it, you're going to reduce your reaction time. And you're going to already have a plan where to go. Okay, I remember that accident, I'm sitting right next to it. In fact, that's why I'm sitting here. I have a few times, not often, requested a change in table at a restaurant because I couldn't see the exits. I just don't feel comfortable. Doesn't mean I'm afraid. I just want to make sure I can get out of there if I have to. And it doesn't have to be a mass victim attacker. There are a lot of crazy people out there, to be honest. You know, that just do strange things at strange times and they can hurt people. They might not be intent on killing you, but it happens, and you can be killed by a crazy person. I can use the technical terms, but I don't think I need to. We all know what I mean. We see them in the streets sometimes. They're dangerous. And then because I make my living, and I have for many, many years, focusing on technology that can predict what's going to happen next. Okay, it's not a Ouija board. It's actually hardcore technology that's been proven to work, and it's not easy. So I've thought a lot about the future, and I talk about that in the book. And we're already seeing some of this starting to happen. What kind of attacks are we going to have in the future? Right now, we have active shooters with guns. As I mentioned, we have the bombers, we have the big runovers, we have the stabbings. But what else is coming? And we're already seeing these things surface, believe it or not. So it's just something to be aware of. And probably, I'll say this, in terms of terrorism, if you saw an attack in Herrin or this vicinity, probably not likely to be terrorism. More likely to be mental health issues or hate bias. Terrorism, let me explain what that is. What separates terrorism from other kinds of attacks is there's a message. There's a political message. That's what terrorism is. It's a violent act to keep you aware and give you a message that's negative, basically, to the U.S. government. That's what terrorism is. So when they attack, let's say, the World Trade Center, full of government and federal and financial companies within the Pentagon, okay, seat of military. I mean, these targets, make sense. So, in fact, in 9/11, one plane didn't make its target. If you remember, it went down to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and 5 passengers decided to stop it because they knew what was happening by then. And the airplane went out of control and crashed. Everybody died. That plane, and a lot of people don't know this, was most likely to be headed toward the Capitol or the White House. We don't know for sure. But that was the two most likely targets. So those 5 brave passengers stopped that attack against the White House or the Capitol. So terrorism carries a message. And I'll give you a good example. When the Oklahoma City bombing occurred, that was a message. Okay, now that was domestic, and that was a message against the U.S. government. We then look at the Century 16 movie theater attack. I don't know if you remember that, but he walked in. I'm avoiding names on purpose. I don't like to use their names. He walked in black tactical clothing, like military. He had smoke grenades, and he had automatic weapons. And he threw the smoke grenades and he just started shooting, killing a lot of people. He had been treated for mental health issues. Brilliant student, working on his PhD in neuropsychology. I say he's brilliant because of psychology. So they captured him, and on an interview afterwards, they asked him, because they're trying to find out, is this terrorism? They said, what was your message? What was your motive? Why were you doing this? And he actually said, this is a quote, my message is there is no messaging. Okay, that's not terrorism. That's a mental health issue. And we've had attacks by people who attack women, shoot them, kill them. Why? Because they couldn't get a date. Take it out on the next group of females you see at the university. People get irritated with the hate and bias because somebody said something wrong to them. I interviewed myself, a person who'd killed 98 people with arson. And the trigger, I had to find out what his trigger was. I won't go into that story because thank goodness the Secret Service was there with me, or I wouldn't be here. I had to find his trigger, so I was interviewing him for hours. I knew what the trigger was, but I didn't want to bring it up to the end. The first 2 people he killed was parents, where he decapitated, and took where the bodies were, but wouldn't tell where the heads were. Then he went on to kill 96 more people. And if you mentioned his mother, he would get you, but it might be 2 or 3 months later. And he would do it with fire. And he told me, which I would never repeat in my lifetime. He told me how he would burn down an apartment building with a single match. No accelerant, no gasoline. It just burns. He would take 10, 12 people at a time to get back. So at the end of the interview, I said, because I had to do this, I said, well, all I can say, thank you for your time. This has been very useful. But I have to say that if your mother were living, she'd be extremely disappointed in you. At that point, 3 Secret Service agents had to stop him, killing me. He jumped over the table. They caught him in midair and stopped him. Mother was his trigger. Okay? So when you have mental health issues, you don't know what the triggers are because they're in here. So it's a little harder. So all you have to go by is their outward behavior. And if you see someone acting very weird, you've all seen them, and they have weapons, or they have access to weapons, you know, call that gentleman back there. Let him know. He'll check it out. You know, that's why we have, you know, an organization in town to protect people. You know, if something happens in the library, let them know. Just quietly walk up to Susan and say, by the way, you know, it's important to be aware. So with all that said, and I'm not trying to scare people, I'm just giving facts. I could scare you, but I'm not trying to. I get scared, I have trouble sleeping at night, as you know. So what could happen more? We have chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, high explosives, which we talked about. So I'll mark the E off a little bit. It's called CBRNE in the government, or CBRN, as we know, Explosives are here, they're already here. Drones. We have drone attacks in battlefield. Drones are a dime a dozen now. A drone can carry a weapon and drop it. It can drop a chemical bomb, it can drop, a biological bomb, it can drop a bomb. It's starting to come close to that. So, if you see a big drone buzzing around, again, let somebody know. They're not a toy anymore. It's something to be concerned about. We're seeing them now 30,000 feet high. Here's an airliner looking outside and there's a drone. A drone can take down an airliner. So we have to be concerned about these things, and security's changing because we have to adapt to these new kinds of threats. So we've had anthrax attacks, very deadly, and this shows how you shouldn't be afraid at the same time. Let me give you one example. In Washington, D.C., near us, you probably remember, after 9/11, there were anthrax envelopes being mailed.
Mm-hmm.
Several people died, including post office workers who handled the envelopes because of the white powder inside that was extracted anthrax. And we found out later there was a government worker that committed suicide that probably was involved in that, if not doing it alone. So again, we start looking at mental health issues. So anthrax has been used already. It's not that hard to make. We've had chemical, many of you may not recall this because it wasn't advertised that much, but in Tokyo some years ago, the Aum Shinrikyo terrorist group took sarin gas onto the subway. And thank goodness it didn't work right, but they did kill a number of people. They said if it had worked right, it could have been 5,000. Sarin gas isn't that hard to make. It's been around since, historians, I think since World War I. There are other kinds of bad gas. Radiological. Again, I'm not trying to skip you, okay? So, if you heard of a dirty bomb, okay? We hear about nuclear bombs. We know what a nuclear bomb is. I mean, it ended World War II. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so devastating. Those were peanuts compared to what we have now. Nothing. Those were like firecrackers compared to the hydrogen bombs that exist now. But a dirty bomb is radioactive material. It can come from a radioactive machine over here at the hospital. And it's out there, it's missing. We have tons missing. You can take that material and you put it in a satchel and put a dynamite in it. And if you get it to the White House and blow it up, that radioactivity spreads. And you can't use that facility for a very, very long time. Again, now you've got a message. We hit a target, we're putting you out of commission. So, where we are with radiological, we have a lot of radiological material missing. We also have some nuclear weapons missing down there, but they can't account for them because they got sold. So we don't want terrorist groups to get those, even if they're low-yield weapons. And again, we have the high explosives. When I was in the Secret Service, we gave a demonstration for the White House. And our explosive expert made AMPHO. I don't know if you've heard of that. AMPHO is ridiculously easy to make. It's ammonium nitrate fertilizer, which you can get at the feed store, diesel oil, and something to blow it up. That's it. So we demonstrated that a car out in the middle of the field. They made AMPHO out of feed store fertilizer with diesel oil. Big bag. Blew it up, put it in the trunk, blew it up with dynamite, and I would say the car probably went 40 to 50 feet in the air. This wasn't a bomb, it's a boom. This flew, and it came down, there wasn't that much left. Easy to make. We'll probably see more of that at some point. But again, the risk there is probably more in terms of government target or something like that. So, our concern here, and I can turn this to not the world and not the country in general, but Herrin, pretty quickly. What I did differently was studied survivors. I didn't want to study the attacks. I have to study the attacks, but I kept a special eye and recorded information on how did people actually survive. And could I turn those methods, whether accident or not, into actual strategies to survive? And lo and behold, yeah, they make total sense. I'll give you a case in point. We had a university shooting. The shooter came into the classroom, shot everybody, killed the professor, killed some of the students, left to kill other people, other students in other rooms so he could make the rounds and keep doing this. There were 2 students left in this one room. They were wounded. They thought he might come back, so they kind of crawled to the door and shut it, and lying on their backs held it closed with their feet. That's all they could do. But it's actually a strategy. He came back, shooting through the door. If there's a shooter and you close the door, people like Kevin know this. The bullets are going to go right through. You're not going to stop the bullets. And they were coming through. After the event, he lived, and he was interviewed. He had 5 bullet holes in his jacket. He was only hit once. Now think about that. The reason he was lying on the floor, his jacket was sticking up, and the bullets were flying through, not hitting his skin. That's luck, but it's also a strategy. Hold the door shut, even if you have to hold the door with your feet, closed with your feet. Don't stand behind it holding it. Use a wallet. You don't have doorstops everywhere. Wallets make great doorstops, especially if you use 2 or 3. If you're in a classroom and you're a teacher, I would keep 5 doorstops in my drawer. It's not a gun, but it can hold a door shut. So there are many of these things that can be done, that we can do to help prevent these kinds of things from happening. So I started collecting tips, and we're probably almost out of time, but this goes on forever. I only included some as samples. So I'm going to say some because they might help, okay? So we start with don't stand behind that door. Now there could be reinforced doors, there could be steel doors, whatever. But don't stand next to the window or the wall. Some walls are nothing. Wallboard, that's basically it, so be careful. If someone's shooting, get out of the area. Unfortunately, in Sandy Hook Elementary School, these children that were killed, most of them were in a restaurant, hiding. No other escape. Because they could. One little girl survived, one little 6-year-old. They were lying on top of her, and she didn't move. I mean, what a brave little girl. 6 years old, all the children around her are being killed, and she laid there motionless and made it. He missed her somehow. Walked outside and he committed suicide so he wouldn't be caught. This is very, very important, and I mentioned this. I've done this several times. I've driven around malls just to see the back doors. Almost every store has a back door. They don't deliver in the front door and go down the halls with wagons and all that. They go to the back door. McDonald's has a back door. Most restaurants have a back door for deliveries. They don't come through the front door and disturb customers. Back doors are very, very important. And by the way, if you're running through a restaurant kitchen to get to the back door, you grab every knife, forks, anything sharp you can catch. Even if you break a plate, you have a weapon. So you have to think about how you can protect yourself. But think back doors. Where are the back doors? Because they typically don't come through the back doors. They come through the front door. They make a splash. Okay? They want to be seen. The other thing about what I like about malls and stores is there's usually just tons of clothing, counters, and all of that. The shooter's not going to shoot you if you can't see it. So you can actually hide on your way out. Or you hide, wait for the next opportunity. Loading, unloading, take off.
So you look at those kind of things, and people have actually survived by doing that. You can't duplicate in strategy some things that happen purely by luck. I remember watching a video of two women cowering down in the front. The terrorist walks up to them, aims directly at them, and again, the gun jams. They take off, and he just gives up and goes to another target. You can't duplicate that. Sometimes it's just luck or God or whatever you want to call it. But in most cases, you can do something to obfuscate. It's strange what people do when they're stressed. We're so used to not going through a fire exit. It's like, oh, I can't go there. You know, if someone's shooting, go through the fire exit. Go through the, it says it's for emergency only. That's an emergency. Someone's shooting. You know, so use those, anything that's an open place to the outside can be an exit. There's a famous case of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. That went on for 3 hours. That terrorist, well, it was really a self-radicalized terrorist, was inside that nightclub for 3 hours shooting people. Sometimes, many times over, just to make sure they were dead, which kind of puts an end to playing dead, you know, in most cases. There were a couple escapes that were just remarkable. This one lady went into a room. All that was there was an air conditioner. She contacted local enforcement, law enforcement. People came in with her. Door was shut. They blockaded. She thought, well, that air conditioner goes outside. So she called 3911, talked to law enforcement. They helped her from the outside, and they removed the air conditioner in time for that whole room of people to get out before they came in. That's good thinking. So there, you know, what can be removed? What can you use to escape? I'd mentioned this in terms of the kitchen. Use what you can. Pick a weapon. You never know. You might, escape might not be possible. Hiding might not be possible. Staying in place might not be possible. You're stuck with this person who's attacking, who might be deranged, but certainly dead set, no pun intended, to kill you. What are you going to do? You're not going to say, okay, I'm going to fight this guy. I'm going to be macho and fight this guy. No, you're going to kill him. He's there to kill you. You defend yourself. You go for the eyes, the mouth, the groin. Your goal is to disable him. Not to fight, it's to disable him. So, you know, just keep that in mind if it came to it. Would it come to it? Probably not. But be prepared. I'll quit in a minute so we can do some questions. I can get to the next.
I think people need to hear that. They think they're sheep.
One thing to keep in mind, and I see this all the time, people don't know how to walk on a street. We were taught when we were younger, but we forgot that. We don't know how to ride a bicycle on the street. Just watch. When you're walking down a street, because we get to be more vehicle runovers, or frankly, it could be a drunk who runs into you. There were more drunk pedestrians killed than drunk drivers drunk. Believe that or not. So don't be drunk walking down the street, okay? Or driving. Don't drink and walk. It's too dangerous, okay? There are more of you killed than the ones driving. But because of the vehicle rundowns, especially if you're in Europe, they can't get guns there very easily, so they're going to get stabbings and they're going to get vehicles. And they're going to run you over. The one in Nietzsche, France, killed 89 people. It was a big truck. It just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. 89 people killed. So walk on the side of the street where you can see the traffic coming. Not have it coming behind you. You can't see anything. So always be aware. No, you can't outrun a vehicle. If a vehicle starts coming toward you, don't start running the same direction. It's going to get you. Side to side. Walk along buildings, not the street. Why? Because if something gets out of control, you can duck into an alley. You can duck into a store and keep going. Don't stand there by the front door, just keep going. So even how you walk can be important. Person has a knife, you don't have a weapon, get out of there. A knifer can lunge in 2 or 3 steps and be on you. And it's very difficult to stop this coming at you. It's like a buzzsaw. And it does extreme damage. Cuts vessels, that kind of thing. And I can't say this enough, if the best tip I can give anybody is if you haven't had a first aid course, go get one. That's for everything. That can be for a heart attack, it can be for a stroke, it can be for a mass victim attack. The most important things, know how to use a tourniquet. Know how to use direct pressure to stop bleeding. Know how to give CPR. In a small-scale bombing, and why I say stay in place, if the small bomb goes off, pressure cooker bomb, and you're okay or you're slightly wounded, don't run, you're going to increase the blood flow. Stay there and use your first aid to treat yourself or the person next to you. You know, in the Boston Marathon bombing, the limb was missing. Tourniquet. Needs a tourniquet. So one of the best protective measures you can have is to know, well, first aid. If you get rusty on it, go back and read it, take another course. Can't say enough about first aid. It's actually helped many people. And as I mentioned, when there's a smaller scale bomb, to stay in place. The Boston Marathon bombing, if you recall, had 2 bombs. They were 1 block apart, and they exploded 12 to 18 seconds apart. Just enough time to run from one to the other. Staying in place, you're not going to hit that second bomb, and that's not unusual. Now, big bomb, like Oklahoma City bomb, okay, it's going to be 1 and that's it. That's all that's necessary. But it's much easier to have these smaller scale bombs. This is so important. So, turn off your ringer on your cell phone. If you're hiding, you don't want your phone to ring. And if people have heard about an event, your mother's going to be calling you, or your spouse. Are you okay? You know, and then bang, bang. No, I'm not. So, you know, turn off the ringer. Don't have loud conversations, have quiet conversations. If you have to have one at all, but, you know that people are going to be reporting, but you go ahead and report. That's very important. Just do it on, you know, the down low, as they say. It's very important. And don't be walking around with earbuds in your ear, texting. Use your senses when you're out in public, especially if you're in a group. Be aware. Forget the cell phone can wait. You can text when you get to a safer place. But if you're walking down the street and you're texting, I saw a lady the other day texting, walking across the street, not even looking at the stop signs. And that's not being afraid of mass victim attacks. That's just stupid. It's just a dumb thing to do. You can't do that. I was also in a restaurant not too long ago. We see this once in a while, just nonstop. But I saw a whole family, a mother, father, 3 kids. I don't think they said 10 words the whole time. They sat there the whole meal. The kids were playing video games. They had their earphones on. The father was doing something. The mother was doing something. The whole meal. Why go to dinner? You know, if you're not going to visit one another. But most importantly, if something started happening, none of them would have even known it. So, a lot of this is about situational awareness. You need to be aware at all times where you are, what you're doing, what's happening around you. And some of these are so simple, but they're so important. Notice your exits and be near them. I have a couple chapters about a personal protection plan, personal security plan. You need a plan for yourself that makes you be aware and reduces your reaction time. Very important. But a personal protection plan says, this is who I am, so I better think about what I can do. If you're 22 years old and you're an athlete, you can run. You can run fast. you're more likely to get out of the way. But what if you're a 22-year-old athlete and you're in the mall with your elderly, frail mother in a wheelchair? Are you going to run? You have to think about your situation, who you're with, who you're responsible for, and act accordingly. So if you're that 22-year-old athlete, you're in the mall, and you have an elderly group you're with, note those exits where you're moving through the mall. It doesn't hurt. You know, it's just being aware. If something happens, use it to get them out of there. Believe it or not, an infant in a stroller, as wonderful as they are, can be extremely difficult to get out of danger. They're in a stroller. Take them out, run, forget the stroller, you get another stroller. You can go back and get it later, if it's gone, get another one. You know, always think, how do I escape? How do I escape? And what are my physical conditions? And you have to be aware of that at all times. Maybe you could run like a deer 20 years ago, but now you can't. Think of that. Not, okay, I used to be an athlete and I won medals. Maybe not now. Maybe this has changed. So think about yourself and what your physical conditions are and adapt how you stay aware according to that. As a behavioral psychologist, we look at people, and we look at how they act, and we look at their behavior. So let's say it's, I'll pick a restaurant. It's 85 degrees outside, 90. Here comes a person walking in, they're looking for him, frowning, they're wearing a long coat. That's your first tip, something's wrong. Now you think, okay, he's probably a little crazy, but he's probably okay. You don't know he's okay. You could have weapons under that long coat, and it's happened. Why do they have a different look than us? Because they're going to die. They're walking in there to kill other people and either going to commit suicide or allow themselves to be killed as a result. That's not happy time. They're not going to look like everybody in the restaurant, having fun, eating, talking, unfortunately playing video games. You know, they're going to look different. So those are two marks. Those are like, okay, something's wrong here. Move. If you feel that this is really wrong, contact someone to help. But think safety first and escape. A meal's not worth it if you feel something's really wrong. And they do give off these signs. You hear all the time where they recognize a suicide bomber on the battlefield before they bomb. Why? They look different. They're determined to die and go to Allah, and whatever the case might be. They're not going to look like you and I talking around. They're going to look different. So keep that in mind. Be aware. Again, it's part of being situationally aware of your environment. It doesn't mean just your environment, but the people around you. How are they acting? I make a big point about, sit where you can see the exits and the entrances. Kay is used to this now. She'll even move so I can see the exit. She knows I like to see the exit and the entrances. And if I was seeing her actually just quietly move around so I can see the exit. I just want to see and be aware at all times. And some of these attacks, I mentioned hybrids, we've had several cases where the runover occurs, the guys jump out with their knives, they might run 100 yards, 200 yards, go into a place where they're not even recognized. They don't see the runover. And they just start stabbing. They're not done until they're done, one way or the other. So because there was a bombing, it's not over, necessarily. Because there was a runover, that doesn't mean it's over. It could be the beginning. So, see what time. Maybe I should stop here and ask for questions. If there are any questions? Before Cheryl kicks me out.
No.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
Sue Fordash from West Frankfort, got a degree in Ed Psych. I'm noticing a great difference in communication skills of young people. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, but you don't want to hear.
And,
If there's-
and if you've got an answer, really, it's probably what I already know. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do about it.
Well, you raise an interesting point I think everybody notices. But what I keep thinking about, and I don't think there's a good answer to that question, by the way. But I'll tell you what goes through my head.
Okay.
When I was younger, the older population said the same thing about us. In grades, they won't listen to me. When my parents were younger, I'm sure their parents thought, what's wrong with this younger generation? They won't listen to me. They do their own thing. But I have to say, there's a big difference now. We've had discussions about this. In, I'd say, past cultures, past generations, you took care of parents. You took care of them. You cared about them. If they got sick, you know. And we're seeing cases where it's, okay, they're sick now. Okay, good luck. They just back off. There is a difference that's occurring. I have to say, if I had to put, and I'm bouncing around because I think there are a lot of answers to this. I think social media has made a very big difference. It's encouraged. You're encouraged with your peers to be totally different. In fact, sometimes you can't even understand the language that's being used on social media. Their own language has, occurred. I think there's still a closeness. Hi, that's my niece. But I think that the language, the culture, the media, and I'll even go so far to say politics. Now, I'm not going to say pro-conservative or pro-liberal, but it's now, in some campuses, you can't speak if you're not of this right political persuasion. I mean, we didn't have that when, I was younger. So I think it's a really good question. I think there are a lot of answers to it, but we are seeing differences. We're also seeing the need to bring it back to this topic where we've had some self-radicalized terrorists need to be part of something so badly that they will think they're part of a terrorist group in Syria with no connection, more than they think they're part of their peers.
Do you see the opportunity for education to come forward, like in a high school now, and teach young
Absolutely.
people? Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Because it's even more than that. Not only can we teach them, in some schools we need to stop some of the encouragement of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's both, and I think it's both very important. Yes?
Tina Price, SIU Carbondale. They have a program called BIRD, Building Emergency Response Team, and each building has a representative. I'm the representative for my building.
Excellent.
Years ago in high school, I worked a storefront, and I thought I would never work in a storefront again. That's essentially, you walk in, everything's exposed, and here I am working in a storefront building. So I talked with my coworkers, so walk in the door, office, 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 and a long hallway to access all of these. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So I was in the back, and I didn't like it. So I finally got the front office. I could see the front door. But I spoke with my coworkers, and because we need to go over emergencies, I said, okay guys, we have steel doors, so lock your door. Unfortunately, the windows don't open. There's a crank out awning type window underneath. And I said, and try to crawl under that window. They looked at me like I was crazy. But, I would kick it out. So I'm thinking the steel doors are enough. Running out into the corridor, which is a straight shot to the next exit, it's a no-no. So I'm thinking a steel door should be enough. I just wanted your input on
Well,
that.
you're raising another really good question. There's a new approach now called basically safety design, security design. There are now architects looking at how you make rooms more secure, like schools. I mean, I've made a few recommendations in the book. It's going to cost money, but isn't it worth it to modify the school to be safer for children? Every classroom should have a front door and a back door. They should have steel reinforced doors. So when that door is shut, it doesn't matter what outside, they're not going to come in. They can't get in. Bullets aren't going to come So I think that whole area, if you're in a facility already and you don't have security design yet, that's exactly what you did. And you're exactly right. You know, going out into an open corridor where there could be a shooter, you're like being at the end of the target range. And your chances are better. There are no guarantees. It's all what makes your chances better of survival and not getting hurt. And that's exactly what you were doing, so that, I applaud that. I think I mentioned it before with Susan here, talking to her yesterday. She's done that pre-thought here. And frankly, I was impressed. I talked to a lot of people about their facilities and all of that. They haven't done that yet. Even major corporations, some people can still walk into. For whatever reason, we had a foreign person walk into Mar-a-Lago this last week. Just walk in. So we need to have improved security everywhere. And sometimes we don't have it where we think we have it, having worked in the government for so long. I've seen people violate security practices, and I felt awful turning them in. But I did the right thing, because their actions could have hurt someone, and that's my responsibility to keep it right. So I think we have to all think about how do we keep things safe, how do we stop things from happening if it should happen, and not just wait till it happens. Yes?
Right here, David.
Yes.
I had a question. How should we address the potential violations of a person's civil rights? For example, there's nothing wrong with owning guns, but we had somebody start shooting out of, what was the name of that Mandalay hotel
Yes,
in
yes,
Las Vegas?
yes.
There's nothing wrong with owning guns, but if we'd seen signs that this person was going to do that and say, hey, why do you have all these guns?
We've had more shootings in no gun allowed zones in this country, which says something. And again, it's not about the gun. Having been in terrorist situations a lot as a counterterrorism person in the government, studying what they do, one of the first things you learn is if you stop something, you just go to the next thing. You stop that, they go to the next thing. If they're intent on killing people, they'll find another way. We went through here, okay, you take away guns, okay, they'll use anthrax. Take away anthrax, they'll use sarin gas. You take away that, they'll use a pressure cooker bomb. It's endless. There are so many ways that you can cause harm. So it's, as I say, if you, let me give this example. Since I work here at Herrin Hospital, if there's a botched surgery, I'm not saying that they would, it's a wonderful hospital, but if there's a botched surgery, do you sue the scalpel?
No, I'm not
You know,
saying that
it's-
at all.
it's- yeah.
I'm saying, how do you stop somebody when you can't just pull somebody off the street and say, hey, we think you're a danger now because of this weapon or that
Right.
weapon, just because you're a danger, when they haven't done anything yet?
There are some new laws going into place that they're trying. It's very controversial. You can watch it on the news almost nightly now.
It's not going to fly.
I think it has problems. I think it's a good idea that needs work. It's just not there yet.
And then you get sued for civil
You can't
rights
just say, I don't like that person, I think they're wrong, go get their guns. It's not going to work.
or their knives or anything, but you still can't pull somebody off the street and walk them up. or
Right.
arrest
I
them
think
without cause.
I think this is the right answer. And I'll ask law enforcement to back me if they think I'm right, or tell me if I'm wrong. Go to law enforcement. If you see someone of concern, you're not going to get their gun. You're not going to, that argument will go on for as long as we're around. But it's up to law enforcement to investigate that. Now they might say to you, after talking about this and investigating it, ma'am, I think your concerns are overblown. Or they might say, okay, we'll check into this. And people have been stopped that way. One thing I've been doing, I won't say this will be a next book, but we don't see, it's not attractive to media to put down the successes. I've compiled 60 situations where federal and local law enforcement have stopped 60 attacks. 60. I don't think you've heard of it. You hear about the ones that don't get stopped. And then you look to why it happened and who can you criticize. And we see a lot of that. But I think you're asking a really good question. I think that's what law enforcement's there for. Now, if law enforcement doesn't respond, you have the right to go back and say, look, I don't agree. We're seeing this, on a daily basis. Would you like to say?
No, Doctor, you hit the nail on the head. Like I said, the big thing is go to law enforcement and report it, A lot of people, a lot of times are afraid to call law enforcement. Never be afraid to call. That's what you pay your taxes
See a
for.
weird person standing on a street corner, yeah, that's gonna fly. No, it's not gonna work.
Right.
But thank
Yeah,
you.
we've got to be very careful. We cannot violate civil rights, and that's just one of the prices we pay for living in a free society. But we're very fortunate, to be able to live like we live. But yeah, there are a few drawbacks. Just like I said, you think person might have mental illness, but they're actually got some odd behaviors, but they haven't done anything, harmed anyone yet or themselves. So we just can't take them off the street and lock them up.
I still have a message on my cell
But we
phone
do have
this
to
morning.
keep an
I
eye
took
on
my
it.
daughter to school, and I got a call from the school in Carbondale saying there was a suspicious person wandering around. I got that phone call. Yes.
Well, I think
Yes, I'll love
there's one more piece to that, if I can say. There's one more piece. Again, as I've mentioned, as a behavioral psychologist, we watch behavior. You don't watch appearance so much. I mean, I'll just be honest. Let's say you're walking down Herrin Street, and a person's walking towards you with Muslim dress. Just being honest. Does your concern go up? Yeah, probably. It's different. That's no reason to do anything. There's no behavior there. If you see that weird person out there,
You mean one white male? Yes.
yeah, if you see that weird person out there, might be a white male, but he could be
The squirrely
intoxicated.
teenage boy who has no friends and no girlfriends, yeah.
It could be intoxicated, could be making threats. Now you're starting to have reasons to call law enforcement. When those threats start coming out, either through behavior or through words, that threatening behavior needs to be looked at. And law enforcement will look at that. But it can't be this person looks different, or, they're a different race. It has to look at the behavior, yes.
But Dr. Jackson, you already alluded to it. Many of those things that you talked about, these terrible attacks, someone knew.
Yes.
It comes out the wife knew, the girlfriend knew, the guy in Las Vegas,
Yes.
somebody knew in the apartment was loaded with gun. If we see something, say something, even if it's our lover, our husband, our child, and that takes guts.
It does take guts, and I mentioned how to do this specifically in the book. Do it anonymously if you are concerned. I'll be the first to say law enforcement doesn't like anonymous so much. They want to know who you are. So they can
Would you
investigate.
take it? Would you take an anonymous tip?
Oh, yes, ma'am, absolutely. Yes.
That's the point. It's preferred to know who you are, but they will take the tip. That's what they're there for, to investigate that. And so the kind of tip you're talking about is extremely important. If Adam Lanza's mother had reported him to say, my son has guns, he has pictures on the wall of mass killings, he's threatening everybody, he's threatening me, they would have investigated. And maybe we wouldn't have had a Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. So it's important to do something with it, because if you don't, what's the alternative? If you just leave it go, then something it could happen. So, now at the same time, we've had some mentally ill people who've been some of the most productive people we've ever had in society. So you can't go by mental illness by itself. You have to go with mental illness associated with behaviors. Yes.
I have a question. With the medical system changing so much.
I'm sorry, the what?
With the medical
Yes.
system changing so much, and you're seeing it become more as a business, and money is very important in what you're seeing. In that process, you've seen mental health services, like the psychiatrist now sees the patient much less, so he can see more people, productivity. So with this occurring, what is your insight into changes that can take place to help the mental health situation?
Well, good question. I think that, first of all, we need other mental health professionals, not just the PhD psychologist or the MD psychiatrist. There aren't that many. There are many other professionals that can do some first-hand screening. Nurses, social workers. They've seen this. You know, nurses, so here's a nurse, I think, how many years? 50 years. Okay. If somebody says, I see this behavior, and she can probably say something about that. So, but I think we need that in a more official capacity. The answer isn't more psychiatrists and psychologists. The answer is more trained professionals to recognize mental health issues when they see them. But more importantly, when those mental health issues might mean a sign of violence or threat. And I think that's going to happen. Yes?
I'm going to interrupt just one moment.
Okay.
We can continue our discussion. This is the first part of our literary weekend, and we're very blessed here in Herrin to have this going on. We've had Dr. Jackson today, and I want to applaud him even as we continue our discussion. He's marvelous.